Hi.
Do you find drawing difficult?
Difficult. It's a hard question to answer. Actually, it's difficult to answer. Of course, at the beginning, it was very, very difficult, especially when you know nothing about drawing perspective, lines, space, proportion, anything you got to learn. At that point, it's really, really difficult, and your teachers, art books, classmates become so crucial learning factors for you, and then you further developed and thinking and rethinking and stopped everything you learned, and you come to another difficult terrace on a higher level where you start building up yourself, and then you kind of released, you kind of feel the freedom, you kind of you feel you have no difficulty anymore, and then you start do your own work, kind of your own creative, very, very personal and very unique work, and then you found the difficulties come back to you, and you really think about it. What is it? I thought I have conquered all the difficulties, but why is still there? And then you realize that's just a fundamental training. Like our student may start with a cube drawing, or sketches of a bicycle or anything. So you start become very humble and very hardworking again. You appreciate all your teachers, whoever taught you, whoever giving you to help you to learn. So it is a difficult thing if you want to get to your own path, and you want to find the answer to your heart. It is difficult, most difficult thing ever, but I think it's blessed. If you draw and you really like drawing, you feel like it's the most beautiful thing ever. So I appreciate the difficulties. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, very well. Thank you. Hi. Is drawing difficult?
Yeah, continue that question. Yeah, I think so. Honestly, it's not easy. I was thinking about some of teachers of mine in my growing process who taught me either that contemporary representational artists or some famous artists in the art history. I just recall some names. For example, there's one a lot of people love him. It's Vincent van Gogh. At the beginning of his studying, he appreciated Millet a lot. His drawing, his painting moved him a lot, and he copied his work. I do not think that is mimicking artist or mimicking behavior. I think I used to read his letters to dear Phil, his dear brother Phil, and they were talking about Millet's work, how moving, and the depth of drawing, and the something noble, something noble and very kind of humanity, especially about his drawings about his wife and his little kids in a very warm farmer's yard, a very warm afternoon with sunshine, with some apple trees. You feel the warmth of the characters. You feel how Millet feels about his life. And Vincent van Gogh, he was moved a lot, and he copied his work very hard. Sometimes he copied one work several times to learn it, to understand it. But if you put their works together, they are never the same, because it's impossible to be the same as the original one, right? Because you are different people after all. Birth, grow up in different countries, different times, different life experiences, understanding about the world, everything different. But learning is great effort, it's endeavor. No matter how well you can do it, it's different matter. But your attitude, if you're eager with it, if you really appreciate the sincerity of Millet's work, I think Van Gogh did. And when I look at Millet's work and I look at Van Gogh's work, and I understood the meaning of learning from masters. The master in your heart is a hero. And there's another famous draftsman. His name is Degas. He's highly respected. Me too. I respect him a lot. His ballerinas drawings mixed with pastel, so beautiful, so sparklingly beautiful ballerinas drawings, sketches, and he appreciates some older draftsmen in art history also. So there is a connection, and there is a red line coming from the ancient time, from the Renaissance period, and then later on, a lot of draftsmen, a lot of predecessors, a lot of teachers keep giving and passing on the beautiful things in drawing and trying to help their students to solve the difficulties in drawing, but it never ending, because new learning never ending, and the students, they always have their own answers. They always listen what you say, try to understand, and then later on they have their own comprehension. I think that's really great. And to myself, I'm 33 years old right now. I started drawing for a while, and I had so much difficulties, and a lot of teachers helped me on different levels and aspects, and I would really appreciate my teacher when I was studying in the New York Arts League and PAFA. His name is Mr. Michael Grimaldi. I copied his work twice when I was a student, and after I left school, I look at his work as my inspiration for a very long time. He's very good draftsman, great one, I think. I appreciate that, and then I try to figure out my own drawing language. Kind of, if you compare my drawing language with my teacher, this one and some other ones, they're very different, but there are connections. I think that's appreciation of solving difficulties if you think the drawing from the material aspect, especially when you compare it with painting and sculpture or printmaking, etching, other forms of art, you will see it's more abstract, even I can say, because it's a visual illusion. For example, if you are doing a realistic representational drawing, let's say a traditional drawing, it's easier to think of some examples. You need to make a space on a piece of paper, and it's absolutely visual illusion, right? Because it's flat, but you want to make a deeper space. It's like a room, a cube, but you do not have colors. Like paintings use colors to show the mood, so everything becomes more pure drawing difficulties, especially if you studied with line drawings to build the big structure of this architecture. If a drawing is a building architecture, and you are the designer, and you are the only builder to finish the whole project from beginning to the end, from the big design to every single detail. Everything is your own handmade work. So absolutely, it's very, very, very difficult. Sometimes I draw with models. I go to the mall, I go to subway stations, and I observe people as my models. Their curved hairs, their skin, their jawline, their eyes, the shape of their shoulders, the way they're walking. They seem like vivid drawing for me. And when I come back to my studio right now, like I'm working on this piece named Demo, short for the word demonstration. I do not have enough models for me right now, but I have found some beautiful photos really connected with this theme, with the main characters in this drawing, and I learned a lot. And I found a photo, especially a black and white photo, is even more beautiful, a lot more beautiful than a drawing. Even though the most beautiful drawing I ever seen couldn't compare with the photo. Why is that? I question myself. Maybe because it's more tender and more gentle, and the detail expression level shocked to me. But absolutely, you cannot just copy a model if you never see. You cannot just copy a photo if you never practiced in a live model drawing classroom. You will get lost, absolutely. So there's I question myself, ask myself, what's the difference between a photo and a live drawing model? What you're trying to do? And I tell myself that everything is mixed together. When I look at the photo, I a lot of times recall live drawing models, or recall some of the best, some of the most beautiful drawings I restored in my mind. So it's a hard question to tell which one is better, photo is better or drawing is better. I think there's no need to try to separate the two things, because they kind of family members together. I question myself, if I'm drawing actual photo instead of a real model in front of my eyes, should I completely slavishly faithful to the photo, or should I be recreative sometimes? But I got lost in the illusion of light and shadow very often, and I feel beautiful, very beautiful when I feel totally in it, when without any disturbance, without any distractions. You feel the entire engagement you have with your drawing. Sometimes feels like I'm a seagull, feel like a seagull flying in the sea underneath. Feel like no pressure, so careless and freedom when drawing. Only sometimes, but it's beautiful for me. And my drawing, I hope someday people would appreciate it. Look at drawing as a different genre, not as preparation for paintings or preparation for sculptures, but people one day will appreciate drawing as a completely different genre, like an independent genre, like a painting and sculpture. I looked through my art history book and I couldn't find enough draftsmen as the same amount of painters or sculptors, and I couldn't understand why. Right now I'm using this pencil. This is a mechanical pencil because it helped me to save some time to sharpen the pencil all the time. Save a lot of time actually, but it's not easy to control because it requires some patience and needs some time to practice until you could totally control it. But it's meaningful for me because I feel very peaceful. If back to the question, is drawing difficult? I think so. After I learn the very basic fundamental techniques, I question myself what I want to draw with my own way, my own path, and I gradually find it and build up my own path. I do not know how far I can go, but I would like to try my best to keep going. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. How do you decide the composition of the drawing?
Composition of a drawing. I usually have an idea in my mind first, and the idea hover around over and over again until it's mature to think about the composition. And I do not think about the composition first. I consider the factors more important, the elements in the drawing, and I consider the relationships between these different elements, or rather say the space and the perspective between them, in between, and gradually composition is there. For example, this drawing, the main actor, the teacher here is demonstrating. It's a demo for figure drawing class, and then some students sitting around watching the teacher's work. So it comes out as a group, a small group of people naturally. And then I look back, there are more people sitting far away in the behind against the door. So that's a second group a little bit far away from the center of the stage, so it comes out gradually by itself. I didn't have a very clear compositional idea at the beginning stage, but I do make craft, like a very simple craft to write down my idea, and then I collect information about these elements. For example, if I want a little girl student there, I'll try to find a beautiful model. If I do not have a model's face in my mind at all, I just Google images. I use some similar figures as that little girl in the picture. There are some elder art lovers as students there. So for the audience, they are empty nesters. So they do not know who they are at all. So I'll put some artist's face there as them. For example, Andrew West. Andrew West is there, Antonio Lopez Garcia is there, and director Werner Herzog, director, is there also as the teacher's audience. They are part of his knowledge, what I learned from him, part of his knowledge part. Well, what he appreciates the director's works. He appreciates Andrew West's works. He appreciates Antonio Lopez Garcia's works very much, sincerely. At least at that moment, I was in the classroom while I was looking at his demo. I sometimes the thoughts cross my mind, not my thoughts, just knowledge, what I learned from this teacher, what he giving to me, not only to me, but to all of his students, because when he was teaching other students also, I was listening, I was trying to understand and trying to comprehend. So all of this are part of composition, not only the location of the elements, I mean, not only the sitting position of the main actor, of the audience, of the students, but also including their psychological situation, what they're thinking about, how they feel when they're sitting in his classroom. I mean, the atmosphere is part of the composition also. If you look at each character in the drawing, you may kind of you can feel how they're feeling about it. Some are easier, like Andrew West's facial expression, kind of saying, "Oh, is that real?" I kind of have a different idea. Can we talk about it? Or the director's facial expression is kind of, this artist is interesting, I want to make a film about him. Or the little girl is very silly, kind of, and I admire this hero a lot. And there's a mannequin sitting in the back. He's sitting like Rodin's sculpture, and kind of lost in his own mind, in her own mind. Unaccountable and unexpressible kind of situation of his mind. There is a young woman, she's holding a baby. She's not a real person in that classroom. She actually, the original character was a classmate of mine years ago, and I remembered her image, so I tried to put her image there because she got pregnant while studying in our classroom. She got a baby in her belly while during the studying process. Her husband was a mechanical worker, architectural mechanical worker, very nice man with beard, with a white t-shirt. I saw him once, and a sweet couple. I put her image there. Actually, she has nothing to do with the classroom or with this teacher's demo at all, but I think it's beautiful to put her there. So it's part of the composition also. And if you look the background, it's the classroom where the demo is going on. The easels, the chairs, some square tables, the lights, and including the backgrounds, pictures, the relief, sculpture on the wall, everything kind of passage of time bring you back to that moment. That's what you feel about a drawing. That's all part of the composition. When I say what you feel about the drawing, including the audience, how they feel, not only the artist who made it, but also people who look at your work, they like it or they don't like it, why they like it, why they do not feel much about it, or what makes them angry. That's all part of the work. And one little interesting about this question is, when you say composition, the first idea jumping to my mind is music. It's how to compose music. Sometimes when I listen my favorite songs, beautiful music, I cannot have a picture in my mind. I would very curious the composer, the musician, what he or she was thinking, what's image in his or her mind when the work is growing. That's pretty much what I have in my mind right now.
Okay.
It's a good question. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Why do you like Da Vinci's drawing?
Why I like his drawing? Since I was in my childhood, I knew he was a great artist. Probably the first great artist I have saw on books, and after about 20 years, I saw him again. I noticed his work again. Not noticed. I saw his works a lot of times, a lot earlier, of course. His work started talking to me when I'm over 33, over 32 years old. His work suddenly started teaching me how to draw. Before that, all fundamental trainings on different levels, I got help from a lot of people, a lot of art books, a lot of photographies, a lot of things in reality. Just some normal people, what they do, or still lives, or this apartment, a corner, or a small stuff. I look at all these things, and everything teach me how to draw. But Leonardo da Vinci, his work fascinated me, of course, since I started master copy from his drawing. His work started kind of talking to me. It sounds crazy, but sometimes a drawing can talk to you like a friend almost, but not a friend, of course. I was totally shocked by the beauty of his work, especially this one, this drawing. Could you show that one, please? Thank you. I am fascinated. How to say that word? I'm
Fascinated.
fascinated. I'm shocked by the beauty of this work, the peaceful mood, the soothing, peaceful mood really touched me. And I suddenly realized that that is what I'm looking for in a drawing, a direction I would like to go further, that direction, something fine art, no matter the art material or the content or the way you render it, everything is more irrelevant from the realistic life, because if you look at the reality, there are so many difficulties. It's full of difficulties and things you would try your best to avoid, but they are there, and you kind of need to tell yourself back to your drawing, that's the most word ever exist in my life. And Leonardo da Vinci, of course, is a dream. It's a legendary, it's a magical imagination, impossible beautiful art world for me and for all of artists, I guess. Not all of them, a lot of them admire this great artist. Well, I'm studying this copy. I learn a lot. Mainly, I see my own limitation, what I can, what I cannot, what I want to see in my drawing. I see a path, my personal path. Of course, it's different from the way he rendered it, or it's different from any of my past teachers ever showed me. It's my own way, like we talked about last time, like cross-hatching in an etching way. But I would like to depict the smooth light effect from light to shadow, from lightest light to darkest dark, the tender gradation. It's the most beautiful thing I ever observed in the reality world. And I noticed that the changing speed of the light is very subtle and slow, kind of. If you observe a object, or this little arm, or this little hand carefully, the volume change gradually and very tenderly. So while I'm render the volume, the mass of this little hand, I try to show the light is turning around. It's almost like there's a space, as if your hand can go underneath this little hand and hold it. So it's more honest, but it's more difficult, because I'm trying to show not only this hand, but also the space behind it, and the space between this little face, this little hand, and this little nose, the space, the perspective, something far away, something I trying to draw correctly, especially the part I couldn't see, especially somewhere far away, seems not important, but really important, are the same as the main actor in this area. And Leonardo, of course, he's a great genius artist, right? I couldn't tell the difference between genius, talented, and gifted. I simply take all these words as encouragement. When some people say that to me, I just think it's encouragement, and I say thank you, and I keep drawing. But I like him also because his imagination. When he imagines something, he dare to think, oh, it's possible. A lot of people never really think about it, and he think about it, and he draw a draft cartoon. For example, he designed an airplane. I guess he was the first one to draw the cartoon of an airplane, and many years later, human being really manufactured an iron bird carrying so many people flying in the sky. I look through all his works throughout his life, not too many actually, but a lot of them just so beautiful, so wonderful, amazing art pieces. And I noticed the location, the places where he lived, how they changed the artist's work and the creation process of the work. For example, before he moved to Milan, he was drawing something else, painting something else. And then after he moved to Milan, he did the Last Supper, the great piece, the Last Supper, which lasted 10 years. And so I'm trying to say a place means something new, especially means a patron, people support him, so he could get support and get opportunity and survive. That's very harsh in today's society actually, because it seems like every kind of art could have the right to exist, but if you look, most of the art schools and the galleries, most of them are modern art, abstract art, installation art, video art, movie, advertising, public art, all kinds of fancy, beautiful representations about the lives of modern people. But I kind of lost. But when I look at Leonardo da Vinci's work, I kind of feel like I found my home. This is what I want. This is the direction I would like to go further, to see how far I can go. And when I got angry, by whatever reason, this piece tell me to be quiet. Not always works, but a lot of times it helped me calm down. It tamed me, make me humble. make me get rid of my unnecessary rage or pride. Too much pride sometimes harmful my artwork. You have been watching me copy this work for about 2 months, right? So, would you like to talk a little bit? What do you think? Not?
Probably next time.
Okay.
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 Can you talk about what you have learned from doing this master copy?
What I've learned from this master copy after grand artist Leonardo da Vinci. It's a great question. Actually, it's part of my self-teaching process. Soon after I left school, I realized that I need to figure out my own path of drawing, and I need to get out of the shadows of all my previous teachers and find out my own path. And I look through the pictures in my art history book, and this drawing from Leonardo really fascinated me, really attracted me a lot. I couldn't figure out why. I know I love it, but I do not understand why I love it. So a very simple way to find out the reason is to make a copy of it, because when you're looking at the drawing, you're looking maybe 10 minutes, right? And it's a lot of time for looking at a drawing. But if you actually copy that drawing, every single line, every little variations of light and shadow, you actually observe that drawing very, very carefully. Every single details, from the big design to the final visual effect. And during the process, you learn so much how to draw. But this drawing is a silent teacher for me. The drawing, of course, cannot talk, right? But I kind of trying to talk with the artist in my mind. What do you mean this line here? For example, there are some lines he didn't erase, probably because he used the charcoal and the chalk on a toned paper. So I try to ask myself which line is the best one he was trying to fix the problem. For example, the contour of the arm, he tried to find the best position of the line, and he changed several times. So I wonder if he had a perfect eraser, or if he had enough time, would he erase the wrong lines and only leave the perfect contour of the arm? I guess probably he will. But the drawing sometimes looks so perfect, sometimes looks like not finished yet, especially under the knees, the lower legs, the feet. I can see his potential. There is a huge space what he wants to do, but didn't finish it yet. Or probably that's what he means to make it look like sketches under the knees, but I do not think so. Why? Because when I look at his painting, for example, that one. Could you show that one, please? Okay. That painting was made similar as this one, similar period of time. So he was a perfect artist, and he wanted to achieve a perfect level of artwork. including his drawings and paintings. So I guess if nobody disturbed him, nobody disturbed the working process of this drawing, he probably would finish the entire drawing on the same level as the heads, the portraits, the best part of the picture. So when I'm trying to do this copy, I'm trying to think what he didn't say and what he mean, and I try to be as faithful as possible, as honest as possible, but always it's easy to say but difficult to do. You think you could understand what he mean, but actually when you copy it, you know how difficult it is. And I still have questions in my mind because I use different materials as he did. He used pencil, charcoal, and toned paper and yellow ochre color on it. That's not my range. I use pencil, mechanical pencil, and color pencil to try to fill it. So there's a difference, but it's all the same for me for now. So I'll continue doing copies from this drawing until I finish my self-teaching process, until I could understand how to draw human beings, 4 or 5 people as a group, how to draw them like sculpture, how to show the warm skin, the texture and the temperature of these figures, and the relationships between these people in this beautiful work. I think by doing the copy, it teaches me to be very, very humble and very, very tamed, and I see my limitation and I see my ambition. Not ambition actually, it's honesty, because when you're really eager with this drawing, you want to make it the best you can, not to compete with this artist, but to you want to see how far you can go with drawing. You want to see, oh, that's so beautiful. Can I draw like that? I imagine one day I can draw like that, so beautiful. You will think like that, and you will try your best. And I think that's the best thing in copying the work, not to sell, not to for sale, not to compete, but to figure out the reason, and you will make great progress while doing this work. And I really hope someday I could have a quiet studio and do this work again, very, very quiet, nobody disturb the working process, and I'll do the copy again from beginning to the end. And hopefully you could help me record the entire working process to be a contribution to later art lovers.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you talk about this drapery drawing?
Drapery drawing. It's the name was orange, basically because it was made with orange color pencil. It's one of the series about drapery I was studying. There are other pieces named after fruits like green lemon, peach, strawberry, a blackberry, and a purple gray. So it's a series of drapery study, and basically it's an experiment with color pencil this one a lot, basically because the color is very warm and beautiful, like an orange. But I changed the name to be Zhizi. Zhizi is a new art name of mine. Not new. The first time I used it in my work. And this one is named after Zhizi, which means it's a new start for me. Not completely new because I started half a year ago. Didn't finish it because I was short of orange color pencil leaves. I was short of orange color pencils at the time I was doing this one, and I waited, and the delivery was late, and I was very anxious. So I started another piece, which was going on simultaneously with this one, like 2 or 3 pieces going on simultaneously together. And I started the other one, I continued the other one, and until that finished, I started another one, and this one was delayed over and over again. And just last week, I finished my master copy, my second time master copy after the great artist Leonardo, and I think I would like to try something colorful, because that one was basically black and white, but I used orange color pencil to be the underpainting underneath the illusion of lights and shadows. And it's really nice because the orange color pencil gives you a tone, so there is a temperature and there's the atmosphere before you're actually doing the shadows. But I had some difficulties because color pencil is kind of glassy. It's glassy and it's not reflective, but if you draw cross-hatching on a piece of paper with color pencil, like 7 times or 8 times, it becomes glassy. So after that, you think the underpainting is perfect. Now it's time to do the shadows with a regular pencil, but the pencil couldn't put it on. It couldn't stay because the color pencil already makes the paper glassy. So that was a new discovery for me. I never thought about that I should do the underpainting first, make it perfect, make a perfect foundation for the pencil work. But when I do that, I realize that the limitation of color pencil is it's glassy. The material limitation part of difficulties. So I remember this drapery study with orange color pencil experiment. So I do it again. So this time I won't use the color pencil to extremity. I won't push it to extremity and then do the pencil work. I'll do it only 50%, and then I'll do the pencil work, and then I'll come back to the color pencil work, and then I come back to the pencil work, and then mix them together and make it look like sculpture, like clay. There's a kind of yellow ochre clay, looks like sculptures. That's very, very beautiful, because one is a black and white pencil drawing. It's kind of cold, especially you use a super white paper, so the drawing looks very cold. Especially after you do all the shadows, the drawing looks a little bit bluish. But if you use the yellowish paper, if your drawing paper is a little bit yellowish, and after the shadows done, it looks like it has tones, somewhere warm, somewhere cold. It's very, very interesting. So I want to push that to a point where it's more full. The temperature atmosphere is more fully developed with color pencil and the pencil mixed together. So the color pencil, especially orange color pencil, pink color pencil, would be the warmer part of the work, and the regular pencil, actually my mechanical pencil, would be the cold part of the work, and two parts should work together very well and build up something warmer and colder together. And actually you could never separate colder from warmer, right? They always be next to each other. Like where the light heats, there must be a shadow, there must be a terminator. What is terminator? It's kind of where the lights and the shadows fighting there, and there looks like a line, but there's no line. It's always an area. It's a range of gray, beautiful, fuzzy, tender gray area where the light turns. Even though some part of the figures, some part of the still life, some part of the drapery, if there's a very sharp contour, looks very sharp. But if you look at it very detailed, very carefully, you will see it's fuzzy, it's tender and fuzzy. The contour is like a fur, little fur on it. Like a, could you show this part? Yeah, right here. Yes, right here. Yeah. If you look at the drawing from far away when it's done, it looks like very sharp. The contour looks very clear. But if you come close to it and feel how the light is shining, it looks fuzzy and very soft. So, how to say? And this, in terms of this drapery study, the orange pencil shining, and the light is a little bit orange, like orange color, and yellowish color, like the lights. The classical paintings, the lights usually looks like yellowish or even brown color. The reason I do this series of drapery study because of the grand artist Leonardo da Vinci's work. I was attracted and fascinated about his work a lot. The drapery study was one part of this attraction, and when I look at his work, I wonder how he made it. And I did copies, and I set up similar draperies. Sometimes just throw the drapery on the floor and follow the puzzled trap of the still life and do the master study. And one interesting thing is I was told by classmates that he did use plaster to put plaster on a model and make it still and make it a plaster like a sculpture drapery, and then he draw it with pencils, charcoals, and then with brush. Look, it's super real, super strong, super solid. But if you look at it very carefully, the details are so tender and wonderful and powerful, and every single amazing word you can use on it. I was amazed, but I was really amazed and admire his work a lot. But the more I look at it, I printed the books. I printed his drapery studies works and put them on the wall where I walk by and look every day for so long time. the more I look at his work, the more I question myself, ask myself the question, is this what you want to do with drapery study? And I said, no, not entirely. So what do you want to do with drapery study? And I think, I don't know. But this is not exactly what I want. But this is where I want to start. This is where I want to pass by, learn something, and go my own path. And about drapery, I think drapery is not just drapery. Still life is not just a still life. For example, a kettle, a little kettle, a small jar. If you look at Morandi's work, Morandi, the Italian still life painter, his work, is that only still life? You can almost feel his personality and his mood, how he feels. Someone a little bit introvert, a little bit quiet person who likes very subtle gray colors, and I love it. I still do not understand why I love his work, but I do. Drapery is not just drapery. A friend of mine told me that the drapery you're drawing, I was showing him the piece named Destiny, which is just a drapery study with watercolor and a pencil. And he said, it seems like someone's is hidden underneath the drapery. Who is that? It's interesting. I never thought of it that way. And then I look at my work again. It seems like, yeah, someone is hidden underneath it. What's that? What's be covered? Why there's a bomb? What's underneath it? Actually, nothing. So it's tricky, but it's interesting part of the work. And the same drapery setup. I set up the drapery on a bed, and then I shot with different light situations, like from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I shot every 1 hour, once 2 hours. When the light is beautiful and changing, I shot a photo. And in the end, I realized I shot almost 100 or maybe more photos about that thing, and I choose some beautiful moments I want to catch. And every single piece showed me a different personality. If you could show that one, this one. Could you show the little photo over there? Yeah, that one is the same setup actually, but that one feels like not drapery for me. That one feels like a mountain, and I give it a name. It's Alps. It's the Alps. It's like an ice mountain, ice snow mountain, super cold, super amazing, wonderful. Just for someone who like to be alone, who like to climb a certain height by himself, no matter how cold it is, or no matter how lonely people think of him, but he doesn't feel that way. He enjoys what he's doing, and I like that detachment a lot. So I give that work a name like Alps. I do not know when can I finish it, because so far I'm doing this drapery study and a green one named Green Lemon, and a master copy for the 3rd time with pink color pencil. It's amazing. It's amazing. And for art lovers, I think, for art students, I think it's a good study. A good beginning, not beginning, it's a good subject to study drapery, because there are so many professors, so many draftsmen who already studied drapery, and there are so many good examples to study with to understand the light and shadow illusion. Also, it's a very good study about softness and dynamic. Drapery study is a good subject to study the mixture of softness and dynamic, because the fabric is soft, obviously, maybe harder, but still soft fabric. So you need to show the texture of the fabric is soft, and you need to show the dynamic, how the lines change direction, how the heaviness and harsh kind of thing are hidden in the softness. It's a part of the study. It's more than just the practice of light and shadow. It's something there you can feel even about yourself. Once my mom told me that my drapery study, a red one showed him. She said, it's like a cloud, like a sunset cloud. That made me very happy. I never thought of my drawing looks like a cloud, but I was happy. And a suggestion to our lovers to do fabric study. First, at first, you may start with a napkin with very simple strokes, simple changing of directions, make it very easy study, and then put a larger piece of lens blankets, throw it on the floor, or maybe a jacket, throw it on the floor, and whatever it looks, draw some sketches. And after you are familiar with how the fabric turns and it comes back and going around, and then you need to draw someone's you need to draw a model with clothes on, like a jacket, trousers, how the trousers turns underneath the knees, how they dynamic goes with the figure, and with the bone underneath the figure. It's relatively easier if you draw the legs with trousers on. You only need to pay attention the basic proportion of the legs, make that proportion correct, and draw 2 ellipses, and draw the knee as a potato, and practice the fabric, the trousers, so it helps a lot. So you understand that all the drapery, all the strokes describing the legs, but don't think of it as a leg, don't think of that, think it like a ellipse, and make it as simple as easy, and practice to use the fabric strokes wrap around that object inside. So that may be more practical for later on creation. If you want to draw, let's say, a pianist, you want to draw a pianist playing piano, you need to draw his jacket, his shirt, his trousers, his shoes. So all the drapery has a purpose, and you need to consider the personality of that person. Is that a new shirt? Is that a silk shirt? Or is that a very old jacket? You wear it for years, and it becomes very soft and old. It's part of your personal belongings, and you almost have a attachment to it, not attachment, just it's yours. So how you draw it, something soft and something belong to you. If there's difference, you draw something new washed, new whitened, like a tower in a gym at the swimming pool. What's the difference from a tower of your own? You brought it there. What's the difference if you draw the two towers? So that's pretty much the fabric I was thinking.
Can you talk about how to draw shadow in a drawing?
How to draw shadows?
Right.
It really depends. It really depends your lighting situation. If you draw a landscape outdoors, a house, a small building, something, a bridge, beautiful bridge, the lights from the sun and from the sky, right? So it's very, maybe very shiny, very bright. So the shadows become very narrow and heavy, especially if the midday, when the sun shines really rich. So the shadows may be very clear and heavy and kind of maybe easier. But the shadows have colors if you draw a landscape outdoor, right? So you need to consider if the shadow looks like bluish or like a purple color even, how do you show it? So when you do a outdoor drawing, you need to consider the local color of the shadows, also the parts under the light, right? Everything has its own texture, its own local color. That's all part of drawing. And if you have artificial light indoors, if you're drawing something in your studio, especially a human figure as your body, as your model, the lights will be more dramatic and more subtle. I mean the details, all the terminators, how the shadows changing direction, it'll be a lot more subtle. So of course you need to do the darkest dark in the shadow part, right? But it's not just suddenly becomes dark. There is a gray area, maybe very bright gray, tender gray, or maybe darker gray, or even more darker and darker and darker until to the darkest dark in the drawing. So it really depends your lighting situation. I was talking about if you draw a figure in a studio, that's how it feels, at least for me. For myself, I do still life more than human figures. I just finished my first figure drawing experiment, which had 20 people in all. I was shot for money to pay models. Actually, didn't able to afford any model during that piece. But I learned a lot from photos, the main character and the audience around the main character. What they're thinking, how to draw shadows with a photo, a black and white shot photo, or maybe a colorful photo. I tell myself that you have to imagine that's a sculpture, a real person in front of you, not just a flat image photo. And I learned a lot because it's almost like doing a master copy. The difference is this is more challenging because it's a photo. You cannot do everything you see from the photo. You have to tell yourself that I have to draw better than this photo. This my drawing is not a photo, although it's based on a flat image. So in this situation, you need to recall all your knowledge and all your memories when you actually drawing with a live model with real situation. So that requires a huge amount of fundamental training until you could work with a photo as your foundation. As I do this piece, this is a fabric study. If you could show the main part. Could you turn to the TV? Yeah, that is the setup I arranged on a bed. The lighting situation is so changeable, so different. Every 1 hour, the lighting situation changed, and that amazed me. It ends up I just couldn't choose. A is better, B is better, C or D or E or F. Actually, I decided to do several pieces simultaneously. The composition will be the same, elements will be the same, but there's difference, the lighting situation is different, and the mood is different. I couldn't tell you how difficult it is to draw a fabric in a winter afternoon lighting situation, but that's amazing, I think. And sometimes I look at the shadows on the wall, the window frame's shadow projected on the wall, and it looks like slightly waving because the lighting situation, the shadows kind of moving a little bit, like it's breathing, and it looks brighter for a while and then darker for a while, and that's a trick from the sunshine and the wind. But that's very, very beautiful. And I can share you a very interesting experiment I had. I was doing cast drawing in a cast hall at my former school. There were about 5 different lights on the ceiling. So the sculpture has 5 layers of shadows overlapped together, and each one has a different gray range, that like a family color. They are merged together, part of the shadows merged together, and then they separated from each other. But they are so amazing if you draw 5 shadows overlapped together, and with the sculpture in front of it, it's very, very beautiful, because the sculpture will looks very solid, a metal solid thing, a clay sculpture, a plaster sculpture, stone is stable and solid, a big mass of something very strong, stand there, don't move. And the shadows kind of playful joke, like we are here, what are you going to do? Are you going to draw me? We have 5 here, are you going to draw? How difficult it is. If you decide I only can draw 1 shadow, the picture will be very maybe formal or maybe more serious. But I think that's part of the challenge of drawing, especially when it's a complicated, difficult situation. But once you get used to it, once you know what it means and how that happens, once you figure out the reason why there are 5 shadows overlapped, and you try to figure out the order in this puzzle, you tell yourself, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one is the darkest? Which one is weaker and weaker and weaker? Which one is the most soft one and the gentle one? And part of the shadow is the difference of the contour. If there's sculpture, Rodin's sculpture standing in front of you, and the sculpture has one shadow on the wall or on the floor, you observe it from the top to the feet. It's very different. You will see the far is from the main sculpture. The shadow looks subtle and softer, like fading away, and the closer is to the base, the model stand. It looks more clear and heavier and darker. Even could be the darkest dark in the picture. Even though sometimes, like the feet, your bare feet standing on the floor, there is a very narrow dark line between your feet and the floor. So there is a huge there is a darkest dark shadow in the picture, but that looks like a line. But you should tell yourself that that line cheats you. That line doesn't belong to the foot. Belong to the feet. Not like that, because the feet standing there, so there's a tiny space, here. Show you an example. Could you show this? There's no line at all. This is my drawing paper, and this mounting board here as the base, because there is a space here, so you can see a very dark line shadow here, right? But it's tricky and it's not real, and you could never tell yourself that this shadow belongs to the drawing paper. No, that's not real. So when I'm trying to analyze what the shadow means, I try to be sober and liquid. How to say that word? I try to analyze how it makes sense to me first. Another thing about shadows is it's not just you just do this without shape, without direction, or without changing from the brighter range to the darker range, without being eager to it. You totally lost it, because the shadow always has a shape. It's the shape of the sculpture, but deformed, and in an interesting way deformed shape of the shadow. Also, there's a direction that's just opposite to the light. It's the light coming from the right hand, and the shadows will go to the opposite direction. And you need to consider the length of the shadow and the length height of the model of the sculpture. How long should it be? The difference. That's all part of the composition. Also, you need to consider, even you do correctly, how long the figure should be and how long the shadow should be. Even though you do it correctly, you also need to consider the narrative, the negative space. The negative space where somewhere is empty, and you need to consider the edge of the drawing paper, how far the shadows should be kept away from the edge of the paper, because that's part of the language to depicting the shadows. My personal habit is I prefer leave more space after the shadows. So the shadows, you imagine there's not the shadow, that's sculpture falling down. You imagine that's a living thing there, like rain shadow by that lovely artist. if you consider it like has a life, so you will consider it more human way. So you wouldn't be so careless or so much relaxed. You'll be take it with more eager and more care. That's very touching. And another interesting example is that when you draw a very soft, very fuzzy fabric, the shadows becomes more softer, and you couldn't find a darkest dark in the picture at all as usual situations, because everything is so soft and so gentle. So in this situation, in this kind of situation, how do you deal with the shadows? I think you better just forget about it. Just trying to follow the changing directions of the strokes of the fabric itself. It will tell you how it turns, and look at it like an architecture or like a mountain. Forget about it, it's a fabric. Just make it a lot more abstract, and consider the situation, only the fact itself. What's the fact? The light and shadow, and how the lighting change the edge of the shadow, which is the Terminator, someone told me. But I learned Terminator, you could say it's the edge of the shadow. You also could say it's a wall. It's a wall between the light part and the dark part, and this wall could be very thick and very thin, and it could have an irregular shape until it totally turns to dark. So you need to consider that as part of the shadows, and the tools you use for the shadow makes the picture very, very different. If it's a very dark charcoal or chalk, it could very fast and efficient, and it could be dark enough and like a dark night, you couldn't see your fingers. But if you do with a gentle mechanical pencil, like this one is H mechanical pencil, you need to work on it maybe 50 times, 50 layers of cross-hatching from different directions. What the difference? If you use chalk and charcoal, it's efficient and a lot more faster, and it could be super strong, super powerful, and you also could show the subtle changing of the shadows. If you have practiced enough, you can do it very well. But for me, I'm a slow person, and I enjoy showing the light a little bit by little bit by little bit, build up the volumes and build up the shadows a little bit by little bit, and they could never be separated. I used to read an interesting story, a small novel, said a person. An interesting story about shadow. There's a man, he went to a forest in North Europe, a small beautiful country with a lot of forests and woods and trees, and he lost himself in one of the woods in a mystery place. It's so amazing, and he lost his shadow. He couldn't find his shadow anymore, because some moment the shadow ran away from him, and kind of sad, but it's an interesting story. And then man looked for his shadow everywhere, and until he found it, it's already still the same shape of himself. but it's already be a stranger to him. I wouldn't go with him anymore. That's a very, very interesting idea, because I never thought of man and his shadow could be separated, and the shadow could have an independent situation, like how to feel and how to be aware of the environment. Sometimes when I'm outdoor, I walk into the pool and I look at some trees, and there's no shadows on the branches or on the leaves. Some shadows on the ground, of course, but sometimes the shadows disappear, and the object, the trees, becomes very simple existing situation. It's hard for me, because if I'm if I'm put into a place, a space without any shadow situation, I'll be lost, because drawing based on, for me, drawing based on light and shadow situation, I couldn't imagine how life would be if there's no shadows. I don't agree that someone do unnecessary sacrifice for someone else's life. It may sound like romantic, but when actually it happens in reality, it could be super cruel and super harsh to that person and to the one he sacrificed something for that person. It could be very uncomfortable. If you consider that as a shadow for something brighter, I think that's very unnecessary. After all, come back to drawing. It's a lot simpler and a lot kind. I think drawing is the kindest person I ever met. Not a person, of course, but feels like that. Feels like that way. Feels like a true friend. My drawings, they never leave me and never run away from me, never harsh to me, and allow me to draw something, to express, to convey my ideas, or maybe no ideas, just a very simple scene, a beautiful moment without too heavy attachment. What I just say. One thing about shadows, for this one, take this picture as an example. For example, here, this is the color of the floor. The color of the floor and shadows on the floor would be super dark, and you may say it's a shadow, correct, right? But if you draw the fabric, you draw the details, how the forms changing direction, especially this part, like here. That's more difficult shadows also. And when you draw this part and this part, you should never draw them separately. You need to go from here and push it to the edge of the paper, and consider this kind of shadows the same important as this kind of shadows, and they are connected, and the contour will be very, very fuzzy, even fading away, but it will be there. No matter how dark is it, the edge always be there. You only need to make it look like it's stepping back retreating, but it's tricky. Some place, the darker you make it, it comes out, it jumps out. You want to hide it in the back, but the picture becomes more bright. So now the paper changing. Now the paper changed to be yellowish color, and not because the paper is shining light itself, but because you are drawing the shadows. You are building up the light with all the shadows, different forms, a different intensity of the shadows. And one thing more important than shadow itself and connected with it is the main subject. If it's a human figure, or if it's a still life, I think it's very, very, very important to make the main subject as accurate as possible. And then the will have someone to rely on. So they're always together. Accurate doesn't mean all the contour be super clear, super sharp. The contour could be fuzzy, could be very, very soft, could merging into the background. I remember one day I emailed a friend of me. I asked him what's drawing, and he said it's shape. So I immediately think if I ask him what is painting, he would say it's color, maybe. And I question myself, is it right? I think so. Most of the times, drawings based on shapes, space, shapes of subject in a space, and how perspective push it back or pull it out, and coming towards your face, the visual illusion. But sometimes, if you are in a dark room, not completely dark, but relatively dark, there's no clear contours. All the subjects in that darker room looks blurry, very ambiguous. So in this situation, how do you draw the shadows? Even you couldn't see the shadows, like everything a lot darker than usual situation. So what do you do? I think the mood would attract me first until I could figure out, oh, this is a chair, that is a computer, that is a cup, until could figure out what they are and find a location for them. But the mood would be overwhelming more than to find out where the terminator, where the shadows are. So that changed me. So drawing is not just shapes. It could be no shape at all. Could be ambiguous, and you couldn't understand what is it at all, and that's totally fine. And I just forgot an interesting idea just crossed my mind after I finished that sentence, and that idea escaped. I'll tell you next time when I record. Anything else?
Okay, thank you. You talked about drawing shadow last time. Can you talk about drawing light today?
Drawing shadows and light. You could never separate light and shadow, right? They'll always be together. Actually, the way I'm doing my work is cross-hatching, and all the light part of the work, like the forehead of a figure, or the nose or chin or the chest, under the light, very bright and shining, right? I actually do not draw the light there at all, but I draw the shadows. So as the picture growing and growing, and the shadows looks darker and darker, and so the light is the light to the little bit gray area where it looks like shining, and it's the whitest white in the world. Maybe Snow White. No, Snow White is kind of bluish. The white in my drawing is kind of yellowish, kind of you can feel the passage of time, like the color of an old black and white photo is kind of a little bit yellowish and kind of getting bruised by time. So you can never separate light from shadows. They always be together, and always there's a Sognand gray area, Sognand called Terminator. It's a funny name, I think. It's hard to say the Terminator belongs to the light part or belongs to the dark part. I prefer to think about it like a connection between the light and shadow, or you can say it's a wall, but the wall sounds bad. How about, let's say the Terminator is a connection. It connects light and the shadow together to be an entire subject, an entire thing in front of your eyes. There are different ways to show the light. The one I was telling you just now was to show the shadows. Also, there's important thing help you to show the light is the environment. I do a sample for you. This is your paper. This is your paper, okay? You're drawing a triangle. One second. You're drawing a triangle subject, right? Imagine the light comes this way, so the shadows will go the opposite way. Of course, you need to draw the shadows of this subject, as well as the little following shadow on the floor. So you see it's turning back, right? It has volume now. But more important is, what if you make the background darker? So it looks different, right? So you have the lightest light, and you have the darkest dark, some part of the object, and some part of the shadow. Also, you have the color in the background. It's never be totally white. So there shouldn't be a line here. Should be a contrast, white and gray, or a darker part of Terminator. So funny name here. So basically, you need to draw the shadows of the subject on the subject. Also, the shadows be projected on the floor. Also, the environment. But you need to observe very carefully, because it's not a flat gray color. For example, the light coming in from this edge, right? The light is here, So the background must look very different. This part here, kind of on the desk. So there are subtle differences of the gray areas. It's very gentle and very subtle, but I think that's the most beautiful part of rendering an object, rendering the illusion of light and shadow. That's almost like an endless comparison. Which one is darker? Which one is lighter? How light it should be, or how dark it should be. This is relatively simple. What if there's another object? If there's another object here, right? The light coming in this way, and shadows go the opposite way. And the thing has a shape, a shadow has a similar shape, a deformed shape from the main actor here. So if there are two objects here, what's the difference between this one and this one? So should this part a lot darker than this part here, or they are very similar? What's the difference between them and the background between and here? What's the difference between here and here? Because this area, kind of the background, belong to the triangle subject, and this area kind of belong to the shadowy part of this subject. So when there are two objects in the picture, or a lot more objects, how do you find the order in this puzzled world? There is an order of the light and the shadow. You will find very clear idea about the order from the lightest light to the darkest dark. It's kind of tiresome at the beginning when you're training yourself to analyze or tell yourself, oh, the light is here, which part is the lightest, and then grow darker and darker and darker to the extreme point to be the darkest dark. But after a while, after enough training, you will be very self-confident. You almost do it without analyzing anymore. It's kind of your almost your instinct. Like if you learn how to ride a bicycle, right? At the beginning, you may fall, or you may couldn't control directions, kind of mistakes, and then you, when you're really good at it, you just tell yourself, oh, I go to the McLean subway station, I just go there. So you even forget you are riding the bicycle anymore. So it's really all the same to a drawing. You practice a lot, analyze very coolly and very peacefully, looking at the objects in front of your eyes, and tell yourself the mystery of it, what is it, and how should I translate, how could I convey what I see, what I feel. So it's like a riding bicycle thing, and at the beginning you will ride it slowly and carefully, and then you'll be very free, kind of free, like you're riding a bicycle, like flying. How to express that? I like my bicycle a lot, and I enjoy how it feels when riding it. It's kind of similar as drawing. You will forget, and you do not feel bad because it's already become part of your instinct to do the right decision and give the right response to certain situations. In terms of drawing, there are so many difficulties enough for me to deal with, so many difficulties, but it's alright. I look at it as learning a bicycle. As long as I could conquer it, I could control it well, I can do my own work. This period would be about 2 years to solve some difficulties in drawing, to search for some answers I want to know. Sometimes I look at people's work, masters' work, or contemporary artists, great artists' work, and I found part of my answers. But be honest, really honest, I know I have to do it myself. I have to keep drawing and search for the answer for myself. No matter how bad or how good it is, it will tell by time. Like I look back all these years, what I'm doing, keep drawing, keep thinking about drawing, keep looking at other people's work, look at my own work, previous works, and I constantly doubt myself and denied myself, and actually that's not denied, making progress, because your thinking ability is stronger and the depth of your thinking is a lot deeper, really deeper. Sometimes get lost because you're trying to dive in the sea and you want to find the dolphin there, and sometimes you will be so desperate and kind of but you tell yourself you should keep drawing, you should keep doing it, it's meaningful. It's too far away from your question about the shadows. And the one thing about the shadows is a lot more difficult. It's not what I was telling you was something a superficial thing about drawing shadows, volumes, hue, not hue. If it's a colorful drawing, there is a hue, local color kind of things. Actually, I want to tell you that everything I do or you do with shadows, with backgrounds, with shining little lights, it's all about the atmosphere of the drawing, about the mood, how you feel that day. If it's a clear sky with winter afternoon sunshine, how you feel about that moment, that is more crucial and more difficult to convey through the superficial shadows thing. You almost may get lost in this this puzzled world, but you will, if you're really in it, you will love it. It's a completely different world from reality, from art world, from art history, from families, pressure, from best friends, friendship, from lovers, feelings, whatever, anything else beautiful or troublesome or tiresome or suffocate you, go away from this world. Not go away, fading away, you will forget. And you just in your drawing, and that's the most beautiful, most peaceful space I ever found in this world, in this time being I'm living right here. It's tricky when you're looking at a work. The brightest part will attract your eyes immediately. You will look at the most bright part first. It's shining, it's beautiful, it's graceful, it's elegant, it's every possible wonderful words you could describe it, the bright part. But actually, if you looking back the entire working process, you know how important the shadows are, how you render it with the shadows to show the light part, but actually the light part didn't deliver much. But it's okay, it's what it has to happen, it will happen that way. So I tell myself that just never complain and never blame yourself if the bright part doesn't look bright enough, probably because the shadowy part is not sufficient, or the gray color in the background is not proper. Proper is a difficult, critical word. How about the atmosphere is not quite right. I try to find out what's beyond the drawing, beyond the technical skills, fundamental training. I try to find out what's beyond it to make you feel different from a work. And then the more I searching for it, the more I kind of feel all difficulties could be conquered in terms of the drawing. No matter is technical difficulties or psychological range, it could be conquered by hard working. By doing fundamental trainings for years, I realized that hard working honestly and doing experiments constantly, and don't be afraid of trying new materials or new methods. It's the best teacher ever in the world. No matter your work is based on life model, or you only could afford photos, or you would like to do abstract work, that's really okay. But the best teacher is to keep drawing and conquer all the difficulties you met during the working day. And the most beautiful dream, the most beautiful secret garden is not in a beautiful garden in a rich place. It's in your drawing. It's your own little garden, and it's your work, your own pencil. You look at your pencil box, how you feel about it. And when the leaves goes off, when the entire leaves within this pencil used up, I need to refill it, and I feel good because I'm still working, and I feel safe when I keep refill the leaves into this pencil. Actually, I have a question. What if it's really flat and really almost no shadows? What do you do? What if the room is a lot darker? There's no brightest bright, no lightest light. Everything grayer and darker. Everything be kind of degraded, not degraded. Everything darker in a darker room. What do you do? So it's like unexpected situation. What you do? And I guess I would do it with my instinct and snooze all my knowledge and put down all my experiences and freeze all my art history knowings. Just be in that moment and observe and feel and try to depict what's in front of me, no matter it's a good expression or it's a misunderstanding. Is totally okay. One good way to exercise shadow drawings is to do cast drawing. Start from some very simple shapes like a triangle shape or a cube, and then you may do a portrait. Like if this is a sculpture, how to do shadows. on sculptures, portrait, and then you can do entire figure sculpture or then sculpture. Later on, do groups of figures, like this one. There are 4 people there, right? There are 4 figures in this work. So control it carefully. Make sure it's easy enough to get started. Make sure it's not be too scared. Drawing is a difficult thing. If you make the beginning too hard, you may get scared and run away. But that's some personal decisions, not my problem. One suggestion for our lovers who would like to practice shadows is to do line drawings. Why do line drawings? In order to make the shadows drawings better, because line drawings, especially in a sketch way, is a very good way to practice your ability to catch a form and be accurate. And then when you do the shadows need to be on the right location, on the right places. You need to do the right thing at the right places at the right time being. So everything must be there at the right time, right place, right location, right shape. And a very desperate thing is, no matter how hard you're working on it, no matter how much time you invested in it, no matter how eager you would like to draw better, it may disappoint you, and you may still feel, oh, I couldn't, it's too hard. I did my best, but it's still not yet. There's only one reason for that. That's because you lack of practice. If you do another one, gradually you will build up your self-confidence, and you will know how to control it. The gradation will be very beautiful. Line drawing. Could you show drawings? If you practice line drawings with this board, you may draw this line, right? And then you draw this hole. And then when you draw this line, you compare it with this one. What's the difference? Oh, there's a narrow shadow going down. So you will see, oh, this line is clear and sharp and thin and fragile and harder. I don't know how to say it. Compared to this one, there's a shadow going along with it, and the shadow has some fuzzy quality. So there's a difference. You will notice the difference between this one and this one. So that's a very good practice for line drawing and shadow drawing at the beginning point. I remember when I was a child, when I was little, I did line drawings with bicycles a lot. Line drawings with bicycle, draw the bicycle from all different directions, and draw 2 bicycles, draw a group of bicycles. It's really a great exercise for practicing line drawing. If you look at some masterpieces who are good at line drawings, they never separated the line from the shadows, especially when the form is turning back. For example, you draw a portrait of a beautiful lady and draw her elegant arms turning back, the shoulders turning back. The line becomes fuzzy and thicker, and it goes together with the shadowy part. So you could never separate line drawings from shadow drawings. they are all part of the same drawing language. Right now, what I'm doing, I'm making the picture really flat, but I never forget the overall control of the entire work. I turn the picture this way. The only reason for it is because I need to do cross-hatching this way. But I know the task for this moment, what I have to do for this area. I just need to make it a little bit darker without paying attention to little forms yet. So I'm really clear knowing what I'm doing and try my best to make the cross-hatching flat like a looming machine. Hopefully one day I could work that way, make it as peacefully as possible. That's pretty much what I have in my mind right now.
Thank you.
When you're asking me about how to expressing light in artwork, the one coming to my mind is Latour. He painted the beautiful shadows and shining candles in orange red way. A red candle with orange light. It's very, very beautiful. I could never forget his work. And then another one comes into my mind is the mystery lighting master Rembrandt. Let's see some of his work. There is a ink drawing called The Prodigal Son. The bad boy come back home, kneeling in front of his old father and little brother sit next to it. And it's very black. It's a very bright shining light in this picture. The light on the head of the father, the light on the main actors, the light on this little wall here, the light on the front part of the picture. You will see it's just the whiteness of the paper itself, but how he made it, because the shadows on the figure itself, the shadows behind the figures here, the shadows underneath the feet, as well as the shadows in the dark room, in the background, the shadows here. So he showed the light by depicting the shadows, and you will see the differences between all these shadows, like the shadows on the father's head, on the shoulders, on his head, and what the difference between this one and this part. So there's a lot to do to show lights by depicting the shadowy part. Let's look at a painting he did. And the painting. Would you show this one, please? No, this one. This one. Yeah, this is a self-portrait about when he was about 60 years old, I guess. He's a master of using light, magic lighting. You almost can feel the light is right on top of his forehead, and how it changes from the lightest light, becomes darker and darker and darker into the brown jacket. But it's not white like paper, not the white like here, different from his ink drawings or etchings, but he never forget the local color of the skins. When the light on the skin looks yellower, or looks orange, or looks brown. So it's really all the same. You want to show the light, but you always need the darker shadows in this apple apple area, also the background. What if the background is white? What if the background is a lot brighter? So probably the forehead wouldn't be that black anymore. Or what if the background is pink, or it's like blue, or it's green, like a Vincent van Gogh, he did his portrait by showing the background is bluish or greenish, or even with little flowers, little patterns, what he learned from the Japanese printing. How about that? How do you feel about that kind of style? You may say it's a different style, but I'm trying to say, take example from this great master. You always hopefully to show the light with shadows. But this portrait, what this portrait moved me is his glances. He did this portrait later in his year, not when he was really successful and really rich and supported by local rich buyers. After his masterpiece, The Night Watch, his life changed dramatically, and he was in poverty, and he did tons of self-portraits. This one is one of portraits. You may see his eyes, his glances. You can feel his strength and his self-confidence, and you almost can imagine an artist still working there. It's a brave hero for me. He's a hero. He encouraged me a lot. This one's a lot different when he was really high. Let's change some other pages. There's a there's a good example about how to practice line drawings and shadows. It's a little sketch, a small drawing. I guess he started with line drawings first, and then used ink to do the shadows. It's important to practice a lot with small drawings, and then you could have enough ability to manage a big picture, because there's a lot to do, and because when a figure is only 1 inch, it's kind of not too hard, or maybe harder, but it's 1 meter high. It's 1 meter or 40 inches or 60 inches figure like this big. It would be a lot different. That's pretty much what I have right now.
Can you talk about drawing eyes?
Drawing eyes. Drawing eyes is probably the most difficult part of a portrait. And if you're thinking about its eyes, you need to consider the glance, how it feels, what the person's thinking, what she or he's trying to say by looking at you. That's really difficult. But when you're really drawing it, you almost lose it, and you're drawing the eyelids, the apples, the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, everything around the physical structures of this eyeball. But everything is superficial, and you actually want to show the glance, the facial expression, of course including the eyes, also the shape of the face, the forehead, the chin, as well as the hairs around the head, the neck, the connection between head, neck, shoulders. I mean the gesture of the figure is also part of the facial expression. I think you really need to know the skull. If you ever draw a skull, before you draw a person's face, or before you do a copy from someone's work to learn how to draw eyes, you need to draw a skull first. And then you will recognize some bony structures on the eyebrows, on the nose, on the chin bone area, but everything is hidden under the skin. So you actually need to consider the skin and the bony structure underneath it. Eyes. There are a lot of good examples of draftsmen who ever depict eyes their own way, and eyes almost the window of a world. You look at someone's eyes, it's a world for you. What the person is kind of depicting a world to you, what he likes, what he doesn't, you will see immediately by looking at his eyes. Would you show this one? It's not this very beginning. It's very different if you draw. Could you show that one? Yeah, that one. It's very different if you draw a real baby, a real child. In reality, a sketch, a drawing, a painting, and if you draw a religious character, very different. What's the difference? How to say? It's they're looking at something. They're looking at somewhere far away, and they're thinking something. Something kind of far away, but noble and beautiful, but cannot be described by words. There shouldn't be any verbal explanation about what they're thinking or what they want to say. Actually, the audience, the viewers, they only want to see a very simple, beautiful symbol represent something beautiful, something higher than reality life. If it's a woman in reality life, in the real world, she may have so many things to take care of, to deal with, to struggle, to suffer, to desire, to cry. But if it's a woman in a religious theme, in a religious drawing or painting, people would like to see who is this person. If it's Mary, they only want to see a simple and beautiful and noble and very, 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 very beautiful Mary. They do not want to see anything the same as reality woman. That's very different. Unless there are some other characters in the story, they have a certain characteristics already be described, what they like, and how they changed, and what their last judgment would be. That's part of the Bible story. Everything already be described, and you have to follow all the descriptions. But back to the question you asked me, the glances. Sometimes it's easier to show the eyes are closed or looking down. For example, this one, this is a beautiful drawing from the great artist Leonardo. The woman, this beautiful lady, she's looking down, right? I don't think she's sleeping, but she's looking down and kind of closing her eyes, maybe remembering someone in her mind. Her mind is somewhere far away. And the eyeballs always has a direction. What the person is looking at, it's almost like pointing to a direction where she's looking at. What's happening over there? It's almost like pointing to a direction. If you could turn to little John here, right? His eyes are looking that direction. It's looking that direction. So eyeballs, they have a direction and showing the stories happening, and it's very difficult to build the connection between this person and what he's looking at. There need to be an answer for that, to be responsible, not responsible, to build up the connection. If we could show the Anna, her eyes is not very clear, right? If you step far away, you can feel her facial expression, but if you come closer, it's ambiguous. It's not very clear, so it's very tricky. You need to practice a lot to make everything clear until you could make it blurry to a proper level. That's it. Thank you.
Can you talk about showing volume in the drawing?
Volume? You mean the light and shadow effect?
I mean the depth of showing depth in the drawing.
I think I had talked about how to show shadows and how to show light previously, and that is the volume and the space. If you could look at my essays a few days ago, you will find answer for it. Any other question?
Okay. Can you talk about how to draw boundaries? Boundaries.
Boundaries? You mean the contour?
Right.
The contour of an object or of a figure is easier to see the difference if it's a sharp contour or if it's an ambiguous, fuzzy contour. Usually people think it's sharp. The contour is very sharp if the contrast of the light and shadow is very strong, and it looks so. If you look at an arm under light, or you look at an object under strong light, the contour looks very sharp because the contrast of the light and shadow is very, very strong. But not really if you do it in a drawing. If you make the contour really sharp, it looks like very thin. I say it's very thin, it means like a piece of paper. It's not like a sculpture turns back. That's the difference between what you're looking at and what you are drawing with a pencil. It's almost somehow different from what you're looking at. Even though it looks very, very sharp, you need to show how it turns back. So sometimes you need to make it fuzzy. Compared to somewhere really fuzzy, for example, under the arms, it's in the shadow and the form turns back in the shadow, and it looks really fuzzy and really ambiguous. What's wrong about it? Nothing wrong about it, because it's in the darker area. It's in the shadows, so it's not very clear of course, it looks very different from the contour right under the light. But when you are drawing it, you cannot just lose it. You have to take care of it. You need to, when you start it, you may start with line drawing, right? You may make a right location of the rib cage, but as you're rendering the light and the shadow, it may disappear, it may fading away, but never forget it's there. And as time going on, it looks darker and darker and more ambiguous, but never forget it's there. It never just disappeared. It's still there. So just make sure it's dark enough. It's appropriately within the dark area. Even though there's a reflection at the edge of the ambiguous contour, make sure the reflection is not too light. It's not reflecting too much, more than the lightest light area. And you need to consider the texture of what you are depicting. For example, the texture of skin. If you're drawing the contour of the texture of the skin, it's very different as if you're drawing the contour of the hairs. For example, this may be a contour of a shoulder, right? And here is the fuzzy, ambiguous contour of the arm. This is the contour of the back. This is the contour of the rib cage. It's very weak right now. But what's the difference between the edge of the hair? You still can see, can look at it as a ball, a rounded object, but has little fur, little ball of furs, and the contour of that person's head, the hair, is very, very different. So when you're dealing with contour, you need to consider what is it, the texture of it. Never forget the final visual illusion you are expecting, how it looks, and goes that way. And sometimes you will forget the tiny skills. Not forget, you just do it without realizing it anymore. Sometimes I got lost, some fuzzy, ambiguous until I do cross-hatching for many layers. Cross-hatchings, I lost some contour and I put them back, and I try to find it. Where is it? That it already got lost because it's getting darker and darker, and it's difficult to find a correct location of the contour. Where is it? Even though at the beginning you make something perfect, the contour, you think it's perfect now, I can do the shadows now. Not really. It's always moving. It's always changing. Even though you think it's perfect right now, but later on you will think, oh, I need to change it a little bit again and again and again, and you never feel it's good enough. So I prefer to make a contour beginning stage very gentle and very light, because I know I'm going to change it later on, because I know I'm going to feel it's not quite right later on. That's not a bad thing, even though it's frustrating sometimes, but it's a good thing because I know I'm making progress. When I realize something is not quite right, that's telling me that I'm making progress, because I see the mistakes, not mistakes. I see where it needs to be changed to be better. And that's a wonderful thing in art. Because if one day you look at your artwork and you do not see any problems anymore, you do not see any space anymore, probably you may stop growing, not growing, you may stop to see more space in your artwork. You may need some inspiration from other people's work, from other windows of the world to look at something else, movies, literatures, or something totally irrelevant with artwork to get inspired, and then come back to your studio and check your work again. You may look at it very differently. And the contour, what is contour? You may say it's the outline of the object you're looking at, but really I think everywhere is contour because the form is changing. If the form is coming upward or outward, is that the contour also? Of course, if you look at it from another angle. So when you are cutting a form, like if your pencil is a scissors, and you cut a piece of paper with these scissors to show the contour, I hope you would never forget the form inside. Within this contour, it's a rounded object, has a solid, it's a solid mass of stone or solid mass of flesh. If it's a living thing, it's very important to remember contour is not outline, not a definitely correct thing of the outline. Never forget what's going on within it, and never forget it's changing. It's easier to understand if you ever trained in a figure drawing studio classroom and you look at a figure from 10 different angles and you do 10 different sketches from this model, and you will see how the contour changes gradually. You will appreciate all the different angles. You will appreciate to remember that it's not a piece of paper, it's a sculpture-like person from different angles. And a good practice is to do a small sculpture, and you will appreciate, and you may get really puzzled, really confused what is contour at all. For me, as I'm doing this drawing, the more I do it, it becomes more abstract, because it becomes left and right, darker and lighter, and clear and ambiguous. It becomes more and more abstract until I finish it and I jump out and look at it again and try to tell myself, you're not drawing a piece of paper, you're drawing a sculpture-like figures or models, a group of models. It will feel very different, not contour, but how the forms turns back in space. If it's a sculpture in space, you can hug it. Your arms can go back and hug the sculpture rounded within your arms. You can go around the sculpture into the space behind it. I think that's something more difficult to depict, because while you are drawing this sculpture like models, figures, but you also want to show the space behind it. But how to draw that? Somewhere you almost feels like ignore it, but it's more crucial. You didn't pay enough attention to the space behind it, but you are drawing it all the same, and it's important. It's important all the same, because you cannot imagine a sculpture in front of a wet paper or in front of a wet wall, not in a room, in a space. It's quite different, and it's all the same for drawing. Sometimes I'm confused what is drawing and what is sculpture, and why I imagine I'm drawing a sculpture-like person, why I use sculpture as a higher level of requirement for my own work, because it's basically drawing is trying to depict something three-dimensional on a flat piece of paper, a flat piece of paper. So it's an illusion, and you're trying to make it real, but it's a trick. It's tricky. Really depends on your skill, how to use the light and shadow effect to show this visual illusion. Sometimes not visual illusion, but your psychological illusion, how you feel, your imagination. Some ideas are surreal, not totally real. I think that's the very interesting part of a drawing. If everything are the same, why don't you take a photograph? It's a lot faster, 1 second finished, 1 minute done. Why you still drawing? I think it could come back to very fundamental instinct of being a human drawing, because you like it, or because you really love drawing. If that's what you really need to do, and you will enjoy to conquer all these difficulties and have fun while trying to learn, and have fun while working hard, and have fun to have some imagination and expectation within your work. See some strange or interesting thing from other people's work. If they talk to you through their work, you become very close friends in a way, even though you never see each other's face. That's far away from your question, the contour, you said boundary. It's an interesting word. I do not think there's any boundary in art world. In art, I mean, there are so many boundaries, so many rules in reality life. So many visible, invisible, printed, and unspeakable rules. And art world should be a freedom land. It's a free land. Imagination and happiness and freedom, and it's okay. It's okay to do some experiments and to see what you want to see within the limitation of your art material. For me, it's pencil and drawing, maybe some relative materials, color pencil, watercolor, painting, other materials. I think it's totally fine as long as it's friendly and peaceful and not harmful for anyone else and not disturbing anyone. else. It's totally okay. And today, artist has so many resources from what they learn from art history, what they learn from contemporary artist friends, what they could get from the nowadays technologies, materials, technology, computer photographs, other materials. They may try to do interesting experiments in their artwork. All this could become contribution to the new development of today's art and could become very wonderful contribution to the world's development. We are living in a new world, and it should be different from the period before the Renaissance, where everything limited and very, very limited. And for me, I try to control myself within the limitation range of drawing and pencil drawing on paper, but I give myself freedom to try some other similar materials, like for example, this one is color pencil. I want to see toned drawings, colorful drawings, but I kind of resistible to use chalk and white charcoal because the flowers and the powders, I kind of very resistible to that. So I use color pencil to build up the tone of the drawing, and then I use my pencil to show the shadows and space in the behind. I think that's totally okay. It's still in the beginning stage of my experiment, and there's still a long way to go until it becomes very mature, very sufficient. I'll write an essay about color pencil drawings, a colorful drawing, what I see from my experiments. I think that's very nice and friendly to other art lovers who like to try this material, and that would be a contribution to the art history. About contour, if you could show the feet, you can see the pink lines, right? When I started with pink color pencil, it looks super beautiful and gentle and tender. But when I put black and white pencils on it, the pink color jumps out. It surprised me. I thought it will get darker as other areas, like the background, but it's really different when it's a single line and it jumps out. It really surprised me, and I'm not sure what to do about it right now, but I'll figure out a way to develop this method of drawing. I think it's very nice and going to be a contribute to the team of draftsmen. And I would like to communicate with other draftsmen who would like to try this method. And it's okay to contact me by email. Thank you.